Welcome in everyone today to a special episode of American Joyride. I am joined today by Mike Lamonica. He's a former CCT combat controller with the 24th STS, and he's also a board member of the Combat Control Foundation. I could not be more excited for this interview. Thank you very much, Mike, for being here.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, let's not waste any time before we jump into what everyone is here to learn about CCTs and what they are uniquely capable of doing. And right off the bat, how did you end up in the Air Force as a combat controller?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good, interesting story, I should say. I knew I was joining the military ever since I was 6 years old. I don't know why. I can assume it's because most of the influential men in my life had joined the military or spent time in the military. So I admired them and wanted to be like them. Um, Originally, I was going to go in the Army. My godfather was Special Forces in Vietnam, and like I worshipped him. I wanted to go be like him. And in my senior year, my dad said, "Hey, to be Special Forces, you have to know another language." I didn't know another language, so I went, "Okay, you can't do that." And we didn't have the internet back then, so I couldn't look anything up. I then thought about the Marine Corps for a little bit, and then I went, "No, I'm just going to join the Air Force, go spend 4 years in, be a cop, come out, and then I'll go be a police officer for the rest of my life." Um, so that's how I joined the Air Force. Found out about combat control while I was in basic training, and this will sound derogatory, but in basic training, I found it underwhelming. Like there were dudes crying themselves to sleep at night in Air Force basic training, and I went, I need to be doing something different than this. So I went to the assessment selection process, or went to the tryouts, day 22 of training. You go try out, and as soon as I walked in the building where they do the tryouts, I was like, this is where I belong. Like the feeling that you had there, everybody moved with a purpose. When they spoke, they spoke with authority, and I went, okay, this is where I could be. So I tried out, and I joined combat control, not knowing anything really about combat control other than you had to go through an assessment selection process, and you were going to jump out of planes and scuba dive and go do missions in foreign lands. That's all I really knew until I got about halfway through the pipeline.
And I think that's a great way to set up the opportunity to kind of explain what a CCT is. I interviewed a guy that the audience knows, Dan Schilling. I know you know Dan as well. And he made a comment in our interview that in 60,000 years of human warfare, there's never been a greater advantage on the battlefield from an individual perspective than a combat controller. Can you explain what makes a combat controller such an important and unique job? And if you agree with Dan's assessment?
Yeah, well, first off, I will absolutely agree with Dan's assessment. Dan and I went through the pipeline together. So when I showed up at Indoc, Dano actually met me at the door. And I've known him ever since. He's like an older brother to me, and I love him to death. His comment is irrefutable, and here's why. A combat controller brings air power to the table. So, if you go back hundreds of years of war, it was mass on mass, and he who had the most mass would win. And then he who had the best technology would win. Well, air power is an asymmetric technology. You can take a 12-man ODA or a platoon of SEALs or a platoon of MARSOC and go into a country and fight off thousands of people when you have air overhead. And combat controllers are experts in that. Can somebody else hop on a radio and talk to an airplane and call in close air support? They can, but they're not experts in it. SEALs are experts in marine warfare. Marines are experts in maritime warfare. Special Forces soldiers are experts in foreign internal defense. They all have their own expertise. Integrating air power is the expertise of a combat controller. So when we talk to airplanes, we're translating what the guy on the ground needs to the guy in the airplane. And they speak two different languages. While they both have the same objective, they say things very differently. So when a combat controller talks to a pilot, the pilot is picking up intuitively what's going on. And they're able to very surgically put bombs on target. I've got teammates who've called bombs in as close as 30 meters away. Normally you do that, you end up killing yourself. When a combat controller is able to talk to an airplane and go, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the effects I need on the ground. And here's the angles I need you to be taking. That all makes a big difference on the battlefield.
And we're going to get into the pipeline and the training a little bit later in the interview. I don't want to spoil anything right now. I kind of want to save that as a little bit of a treat down the line here. How old are you once you're out of the pipeline and you're officially a CCT?
Yeah, I think if you go tooth to tail, if you did the math, all the training is 24 months. That's assuming you don't get washed back or you don't get injured. So if you join at 18 years old, you show up to your unit at 20 as an E4. and you're the youngest, least experienced guy on the team, but you've got 2 years of nothing but training under your belt.
Got it. Got it. That's young, but when you think about it, like you said, you still got 2 years of nothing but train, train, train. When we spoke before the interview, you had said something that really piqued my interest, that you were in Somalia not shortly before the Battle of Mogadishu and Black Hawk Down had occurred. Can you explain to the audience what you were doing there in your role, and what was it like in Somalia? What was the atmosphere in the buildup to what became October 3rd, 1993?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thank you for asking, because uh, in today's warfare, especially after GWAT, everybody likes to promote all the death and destruction that goes along with their jobs. And combat controllers have enough of that under their belts, for 10 different units or organizations, if you will. But there's also a humanitarian aspect to our job, where we would go in and we will land airplanes in remote areas where planes can't land, or sometimes just give access to aircraft. So the reason I was in Somalia is there was a humanitarian effort going on to feed the Somalis. Somalia was controlled by 3 different warlords at that time, and everything that was coming in, the warlords would take and they would distribute among themselves, and then they would hold the population hostage. So I was stationed in Germany, and we got a call within 48 hours. I was on an airplane down to Djibouti, Africa, and then we staged off of the coast of Somalia because it was unsafe to stay on Somalia. So they actually turned a battle carrier group around for us, and we staged off the ship. And every morning we'd fly in and we'd run the international airport right there in Somalia. We'd bring all the aid in. We had Pakistani UN forces with us, and their job was to usher the food at a distribution point and make sure it got out to the people who really needed it, as opposed to the warlords taking it. So that's why we're there. We're there for a humanitarian mission.
Did you get the sense at the time, even though you're there for a humanitarian mission, you're not conducting combat operations like you explained, could you kind of get the sense like this situation feels like it could really escalate and get nasty?
Oh, absolutely. It was a powder keg from the time we stepped on the ground. And so we went in and we were full uniform, full kit, and weapons, everything exposed. We hit the ground, and I think there was 5 or 6 of us combat controllers. We get on the ground. I was on the first aircraft, which meant they went in, uncontrolled, and just parked in an open spot. And then we knew where we were going to put all the rest of the airplanes. So we immediately got off and started marshaling planes into space. And as I'm marshaling planes, the State Department guy runs up to me. He's like, "You need to put your weapons away. You're gonna start something here." I'm like, "Hey, dude, you go talk to my boss, because nothing you say matters to me." And after that first day, they had us come in civilian clothes every day, and we had our weapons concealed. But that first day we were on the ground, immediately there were teenage gang members driving up and down the runway in what they call technical vehicles. So basically Toyota Hiluxes and things like that with a 50 cal equivalent mounted in the back. So crew-served weapon, if you will. While they never shot at us, they were absolutely trying to antagonize us. At least the technicals never shot at us. While we were at our control point every day, we're down on the north end of the runway. We would hear cracks go by us. It was harassing fire. They weren't trying to actually hit us, but they were trying to start something. So absolutely, we knew that place was a powder keg from the second we hit the ground.
And I do want to make a note here, and maybe you can expand on it. Dan Schilling spoke very highly, and he was in the Battle of Mogadishu as one of the CCTs, and he said that they were incredible calling in the helicopters and stuff. Do you have anything you want to say about the CCTs and what role they did play in the Battle of Mogadishu?
It was probably the first time in a while where they really got to put on display the asymmetric nature of a combat controller. We've been working with special forces and SEALs and Rangers for years, and as we would work up to go do things, people were like, "Yeah, you're here. We may need you. We'll probably never call for fire. We don't need it." Well, Somalia put on full display that in close quarters environments, even when building, clearing, and capturing bad guys is the most important thing, what a combat controller brings to the table is very important. And whether it's Dan Schilling or Jeff Bray or Pat Rogers, or any of the other guys that were there, what they did in confined spaces and controlling aircraft was incredible. It saved a lot of lives. Had the administration at the time allowed us to use AC-130s, you can make the argument that it would have never gotten escalated as far as it would, but the administration wouldn't allow AC-130s to fly over Mogadishu, and that, that was a strategically poor decision that probably got a lot of people killed.
And I've spoken to some other veterans in that battle, and I think they would agree 1000% with the comments you just said. And I'm glad we were able to touch on Somalia because, like you said, and we're going to get into a lot of combat and the kind of the scale of destruction and raw power a CCT can bring. But also, it's very cool that there's a humanitarian element and they can help people. And I personally think that's very neat. After Mogadishu and after Somalia, you end up in Angola, Africa, working a little bit with the elections. Can you explain to the audience what you were doing there?
Yeah, so again, really great time of my life as being a young operator. I came back from Somalia, and literally a week later, I got called in and said, "Hey, you're going now. You're going to Angola." And I'm like, "Cool, let's keep sending me. This is what I want to do." As we were going down there, the Angola was having their first democratic election in 30 years, and they were still a warring country. So we would literally fly into a warring factions camp at a dirt strip. We'd load up a bunch of them in back of 130. We'd fly them to their hometown, let them vote, take them back, and then we'd go to the party they were fighting the next day, pick them up, take them to their hometown, let them vote. There wasn't a whole lot of combat controlling going on. Really, the air component commander at the time said, "Look, I want guys who understand ground stuff in the back of these planes because we're bringing on all these experienced warriors. Now they're tribal people, but they're warriors, and I need them to help me control what's going on in the back of the airplane." So we were almost like bouncers. We weren't armed. We were back there and we controlled the onloading and offloading of people. And then we made sure people didn't have weapons and things like that. And every single day, something happened in the back of the airplane that the combat controllers could see what was going on, but the traditional Air Force people they were so focused on their Air Force test, they weren't picking up things. And we were mitigating danger every single day. There was one point where I had actually gone home. My buddy Scott Light had relieved me, and somebody had got injured out in a camp. And Scott had come up on a plane. He's like, "We can jump in, we can land an airplane, we get those people out of there." Unfortunately, the air component commander was very risk averse and was like, "Well, I can't have you jump in. There's no medics on the ground." And we're like, "Yeah, but that's a peacetime requirement. This is a real world scenario where somebody's life needs to be saved, and we can go save their life." But it's just interesting how things played out there in that deployment. And it was a great experience for me.
So early on in your career already, you've been to Somalia, you've been to Angola, Africa, and I believe you also were in the first Gulf War. Is that correct?
I sure was. I was with the 3rd Armored Division. I timed the Gulf War perfectly. So I was on leave when that kicked off in August of that year of, I think it was 90. And then they had me scheduled to go to Army SEER School, which I'd volunteered for. And they said, "Well, we can't send you to deployment because we're sending you to SEER School." And I went to my first sergeant's office and said, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." I said, "I didn't join the military to go to schools. I joined the military to go fight wars." And he's like, "Well, if we send you to the Gulf, you may never get to SEER School again." And I already had the Air Force SEER School. I was like, "I don't care. I'd rather be in the Gulf War than go, get another certificate under my belt." And eventually I ended up there. I left for the Gulf War in January. We were flying into Saudi Arabia out of Germany, and we had to turn around because the air war had started. So we're on hold for 12 hours. I landed the day the air war started. All the combat controllers had been there for 6 months, were out training other organizations. So they went, "Hey, we need 3 guys to go north with the Army right now." I hit the ground. I went straight up north. Had a lot of my friends who were pretty mad at me because they'd been sitting on the ground for 6 months waiting for the war to start. And when it started, I rolled in and went straight up with the Army. But I was in the 3rd Armored Division for the duration of the war. We actually convoyed into Iraq and Kuwait with them. And there was a point where the main's GPS went down. My team leader said, "Hey, our GPS is up." And they said, "Cool, you guys get up front." We actually led them into Iraq. The 3rd Armored Division main. It was a really neat experience.
That's incredible. See, most viewers of this show are on the younger side. Many of them weren't even alive when the first Gulf War happened. When you lead this group up into Iraq, the 3rd Armored Division, what type of resistance were the Iraqis putting up at that time?
Well, we were at the 3rd Armored Main as opposed to their advance. So we were behind the tanks. The tanks,
Gotcha.
we could hear them north of us, and they were just crushing stuff. Like by the time we got to stuff, there were just skeletons of vehicles around. There was no threat to us. We also had some TAC Ps with us, and They were doing some close air support, dropping bombs where the tanks may have had some issues. By the time we got through with the main element, there was no resistance. There were a lot of people either dead or complying.
I got to ask, this is your first time in combat going to the Gulf War. Did it live up to expectations for you? Was it what you were hoping to be when you said, I didn't join to go to school, I joined to go to war?
Hoping is probably the wrong term because I never hoped for anything other than to be able to do my job. It was underwhelming because our forces, our ground forces, just laid waste. I mean, we would see every morning, we'd see the planes go over and we'd hear them dropping bombs, and then the main tanks would move out and then we would follow them. And by the time we got everything was taken care of. So I really considered it kind of a camping trip. It was combat, but it wasn't the kind of combat that I envisioned. You know, both my grandfathers were in World War II. Many of my uncles were in Vietnam. My godfather was a special forces soldier in Vietnam, and their stories of combat were much different than what I was experiencing in the Gulf War. So I came out of there satisfied I was doing my job because we did a lot of resupply stuff. We called a lot of airdrops in for our organization, the Third Armored Division, and that was a neat experience. But I didn't consider myself combat tested coming out of there at all.
Well, I think that, what we're going to get into now is when the wheels really start rolling in the GWAT and things like that. But before, what made you want to go to the 24th STS? And can you briefly explain to the audience what separates a CCT in the 24th Special Tactics Squadron from a CCT that's not in that element?
Yeah, so I would say going from a tier 2 combat control squadron to the tier 1, which is the difference, tier 1 and tier 2, is like being a senior in college professional athletics to going to the pros. I do believe almost every combat controller could go to the tier 1 unit and be successful. A lot of them choose not to for a variety of reasons. It's a hard life and is extra hard on the families. Being a combat controller in and of itself is difficult on the person in the family. Going to the tier 1 unit is more so. And then the mission and the authorities are different, right? The mission of the tier 1 unit is counterterrorism, and they have different authorities to go do things. So when you go through the training, they absolutely take your skills from a graduate level to a PhD level. They absolutely do that. But they also focus very much on decision making and working autonomously, because you might find yourself as one combat controller, one CAA guy, and one Delta or SEAL somewhere around the world, having to make decisions that could have international implications. So those are the differences. But I don't get wrapped around the axle. I know a lot of guys go, well, I was a tier 1 operator and that makes me better. Well, it does, in the sense that you applied for it, you went and did it, and you got some elevated training. But I believe almost every combat controller can go to the tier 1 units and do very well.
Did you want to go to the 24th STS just because you viewed it as this is the next challenge? Like, what was the motivation for wanting to go to the tier 1?
Yeah, I tell you, I said this to Dan Schilling after I'd retired, and he laughed at me. He's like, yeah, that's you. I've spent my entire life trying to prove that I can do that next thing. Why I'm wired that way, I don't know. But I always have been. And when I graduated combat control school, a bunch of guys from that unit showed up at our graduation. They showed up in civilian clothes, and they ended up talking to me and my dad. I think my mom was even there. And they're like, yeah, if you come to this unit, you can't have tattoos, probably shouldn't have family. We do things that are unique. And I was like, cool, sign me up. My dad's like, do you really want to go do that? I'm like, that's exactly where I want to be. So I left combat control school. I went out to McChord Air Force Base, served my first 2 years there. My boss there went to the 24th. He came back, he said, they asked, why aren't more young guys showing up? I said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go do that thing that my imagination has a mind's eye view of. I said, I need another assignment. So I went to Germany, and that was a great move for me. I needed to mature emotionally, but I also needed to mature professionally. And when you go overseas, nobody can respond to Africa faster than the guys out of Germany. You just can't. Like, it's a physics thing. So I got to do a lot of neat things while I was in Germany that put me in a position to be more ready to go to 24th when I went there.
And I guess I should have asked a little, I should have had you clarify. When you go to the 24th, it's not like the entire 24th, a bunch of CCTs deploy together, right? It's the one guy's going with Delta, one guy could be going with the SEALs. Could you explain kind of how it's, I don't know if farms out, but like you guys are getting assigned to different teams and you're acting in your role as the CCT in support of whether it's the SEALs, the Rangers, whatever it could be. That's correct, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So JSOC, it's Joint Special Operations Command, right? Joint being the key term there, and is made up of all the tier one units, and those tier one units work together to do a lot of things. They work together differently than combat control. So when I showed up to 24th, one of the first things they said to us is, "Hey, you are here to work in the seams," and it's a great analogy, or it's a great statement, really, because while Dev Group and Delta and the Rangers all work together, they are separate units and they work independently. Periodically, a person from the Rangers may go work with Delta, or a person from the SEALs may go work with Delta, or vice versa. But habitually, combat controllers are aligned with Delta Force, Dev Group, and the Rangers, and you cycle through those. So you're constantly working with all those units, and you're not just working with, you're living with them. So you do pre-alert with them, you do alert with them, and then you go to war with them, and you do that cycle over and over and over again. Sometimes you may be in a Navy cycle, sometimes you may be in a green Delta cycle, sometimes you may be in a Ranger cycle. My cycle happened like I would do pre-alert with the Navy, alert with the Navy, come back, do alert with the Rangers, then I would do pre-alert with the Army, alert with the Army, and I just cycled like that. It just seemed like I had this really what I would consider a perfect cycle. So I got to work with all of them all the time. And it was just a wonderful opportunity because you get to see the goods and the bads of how each unit does things. You get to learn from some of the best in the entire community. So yeah, it's a great experience.
And we're gonna get into your opinions kind of at the end. We always have a fun little thing we're gonna do with the SEALs and Delta. But before we're gonna do that, where were you on 9/11, and when did you realize that 9/11 is not an accident, that the country is now, the world has changed, we're at war?
Yeah. So another unique timing thing. So uh, I was an instructor at the schoolhouse from 98 to 01. And in the summer of 01, I was preparing to go back to the unit. I told them, hey, here's my desires, here's where we're going to go. And they said, absolutely, we'll bring you back up. And I was supposed to leave the schoolhouse, take some leave, and then show up to the unit and go sit some time on a team so that I can eventually take a team. That was the goal. Well, 9/11 was my last day at the schoolhouse, and it was just coincidental. It's not like 9/11 happened that they said we're moving you quickly. 9/11 was the day that I was going to finish my schoolhouse, and we were getting ready to put the students in the field, and they do this briefing for us to give us their op order before they go to the field, tell us what they're going to do and how it's going to go down, given the constraints we've given them. We're in the middle of this brief, and it's a sacrosanct time. Like nobody's allowed to walk in the room. It's the students' time to validate for us that they know what they're doing. One of my instructors walks in the room, and I turned to him and I give him the what the fuck look. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in here? He goes, dude, I got to turn the TV on. It's okay. So I'm pissed because nobody's ever allowed to do this. I'm the lead instructor. Turns the TV on, and when he turns the TV on, the second plane flies into the towers, and we all go, holy shit! So immediately we knew it was real. We knew it wasn't an accident because at this point we'd now been told the first tower had been hit, second tower had been hit, and the Pentagon had been hit. So we knew there was a pattern there. The unique thing is the combat control school is on the other side of the fence of the JSOC compound. So I immediately said, okay, we're going to stop what we're doing. We had students posted guarded all entryways to make sure nobody was going to come driving a car up there and try to put a bomb near the JSOC compound. And then we kind of went into contingency planning just to deal with what was going on in the immediate. Eventually, we ended up getting the students out in the field, and then my next day I showed up at the unit. I went home that night. My wife's like, "Yep, we're not taking leave." I'm like, "No, we might still be able to take leave." She's like, "You're full of shit." She's like, "You're gonna go back to the unit, and 2 weeks from now you'll be gone, and I'll see you when I see you." And she was right. As most of the conversations with my wife throughout my marriage, she was absolutely right. I showed up at the unit the next day. We immediately started planning for our first target. For the next 30 days, we worked 20-hour days prepping, and then we rolled out. And my wife and I had 2 days off that whole year together.
Well, that is, I mean, I'm speechless at that time, just that time turnover. And I like how you gave your wife a shout out. A lot of guys do, Tough to leave your wife behind, I imagine. Tough when you got a family, but sounds like she absolutely understood. Let's get into now. You did 4 combat jumps. We're going to cover 3 of them during your time in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And I think this, I cannot wait to talk about this because this is unbelievably unique compared to, the average guest who might come on this show. Your first combat jump going into Afghanistan, not that much longer after 9/11. Can you explain to the audience what the objective was, what the mission was, and what you thought, like, I'm about to do my first ever into a war zone combat jump?
Yeah, so I show up to the unit on 9/12, and immediately we get an intel briefing. They go, "Hey, as with any real world event, the first thing we're doing is, hey, where are airheads that we can get forces in the country?" And we weren't looking for, a Russian airfield. We were looking for something that people wouldn't know that we were infiltrating using. So we found what we called Objective Rhino, which is a place that had landed airplanes to bring rich people in to go hunting and shit like that. But it was a dirt strip in the middle of nowhere. As things evolved over the next few weeks, the different units got their taskings, and Delta was going after Mullah Omar, the lead planner for 9/11. And we knew it was a long helicopter flight for them to get there. We actually inserted some weather guys in combat control of the PJs on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan to gather environmentals. And all the information they passed back basically said, here's the amount of fuel helicopters need to get to the target. Here's the amount of weight they can carry. So it changed the aircraft loads for the helicopters. What we knew is the helicopters could get there, but they couldn't get home. So we said, okay, Objective Rhino is going to be a forward area refueling point and rearming point. So as they launched to go do their target at Mullah Omar's place, we jumped in, and we did something that had never done before in combat. We surveyed an LZ, a landing zone, in a single period of darkness. So we over the next 30 days beforehand, or the prior 30 days, we practiced every day. How can we jump in, get the minimum amount of information required, send it back to headquarters, have headquarters say, yes, we can land airplanes on it, and have them land on it in the same period of darkness. So we got it down to 4 hours. From the time we left the airplane to the time we were able to put planes on the ground with a new survey that gave the Air Force reasonable assurance that we weren't going to sink an aircraft in the middle of the desert. With 4 hours, and something we'd never done before. The closest to that was Desert One back in 1979. We were trying to land airplanes to go do the Iran hostage rescue. So as leading up to that, how did I feel? Like I had dueling emotions, right? First off, we were all angry. We were fucking pissed about what happened in 9/11. We just wanted to go get vengeance. That was absolutely top of mind. We wanted to make sure we did it smartly and didn't want to relive what happened at Desert One in 1979, 1980 time period. And then we were excited. We were going, hey, man, we're going to go do this thing we've trained our whole lives to go do. The average age of the guys on that jump, I was in it 14 years. I think the average time in was probably 12 years. So we had a really seasoned team of guys. And we were excited to go do the job. Counterbalance that with every event up to 9/11, you would spin up and you would not go somewhere. Like it's not the first time I was ready to parachute. So my first preparation to parachute in combat wasn't post 9/11. It was actually 1994, getting ready to go into Haiti. I was on an airplane with the parachute on my back. We were getting ready to taxi down the runway, and Jimmy Carter intervened and got in the way of my first combat jump. So as we're preparing for October 19th, we're like, yeah, it's not really going to go. Some jackass is going to get involved, and we're not going to go do our job. But leading up to it, we prepared every single night to say what's going to happen. We all got on a plane on October 19th. We were kind of looking at each other like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. We got this 4-hour plane ride. And the whole time, like a teammate of mine, Kyle Stammer, who's sitting off to the right of me, we just kind of kept looking at each other like, is this going to go? Is it going to go? Well, man, we're standing up. The Rangers in the aircraft are saying the Ranger Creed, which is what they do before they do a jump. And we're like, holy shit, this is going to happen. Doors open, and before you know it, we're out of the airplane. I'm like, holy fuck, we just jumped into combat. And so it was pretty cool until I hit the ground, because it was a higher elevation drop zone. So I think it was 3,300 feet. Parachutes fall faster at higher altitudes. So you hit the ground harder when you're landing at 3,300 feet than you are if you're hitting at mean sea level. I hit the ground like a sack of shit. It took all the air out of me. Um, got my shit together and then moved out and did my job that night. It was really, really neat. And, you know, for us, the coveted position on the airfield is to be the team leader or the air traffic controller, because that's where all the shit's happening. And to show you how talented of a team we had, I was in 14 years and I was a guy working on the runway. I was a guy taking measurements to see uh, how hard is the ground and how many aircraft can we land on it before we destroy this airfield. So I was a nug on this airfield with, you know, a team of, I think we had 19 guys maybe. And I was just a nug. I was what we would now send an E4 to go do, they had an E7 do.
So are you doing all this under night vision, or was the
Oh yeah.
moon out? Oh, so you're all under night vision.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's wild. And I assume it's not the now they got the 4-tube ones, like the really
Right.
like the space alien type gear. What was the night vision you were using back in 2001? Did that make your job pretty difficult, or was it still clear enough that you could do it pretty well?
Yeah, by this time, night vision had evolved. So, like back in the PVS5, PVS7 days, they were these monocles that really they were horrible. By this point, I think we had PVS11s, which were made for flyers. They had pretty good acuity, a little bit of depth perception. They were decent. But the thing about it is there was almost no illumination when we hit the ground. So your night vision goggles only work as well as they could take in ambient light. And because we're in the middle of the desert, there were um, no landmarks. You couldn't look at a building or a runway and go, "Hey, I know I'm on runway 20, so that means it heads northwest." You kind of had to find your way around. So when I hit the ground, the only land reference point I had was where an AC-130 had engaged a target, and I knew the target they were going after. So I went, "Okay, that explosion over there must be this part of the objective," and that was the only thing that gave me my orientation. Um, we weren't as adept at using GPSs at the time. It was probably the first generation of E-Trex GPS that you would have on your shoulder, but we just weren't using them a whole lot at that point. So while I had it there, it wasn't something I was quickly referencing. 3 years, fast forward 3 years, and guys had them on the wrist, and they were referencing them really well. So it was pretty disorienting. We got on the ground. But once I got to the proposed runway, if you will, I knew where I was, and we were able to orient pretty quickly.
And how long after you guys land and take care of business and get your mission done does it take for American planes to show up at this airfield? And what are they bringing Rangers? Who are these? Are they bringing supplies? Like the planes that first come in, what are they bringing with them?
Yeah, so our goal is to be able to land aircraft pretty quickly. So we got on the ground. In this case, since we had to survey it, it was 4 hours. We did a survey. We had to pass all that information back. We had to go to higher headquarters for them to go, "Yes, you can land a plane on it." And put this in perspective, we were jumping in fully knowing full well that we might not be able to land airplanes. So now we've jumped all these people in and we can't get them out. Like that was part of the risk of this mission. So at the, after we collected all our data and we sent it up, we're back saying, "Yes, you'll be able to land airplanes." On the, 4 hour mark, we landed planes and they were bringing in fuel. It's what they were bringing in. We landed 130s with fuel in the back of them so that the helicopters coming off the objective come back and refuel and they can make it home. Which is exactly what we did.
And on Operation, I'm sorry, not Operation. It's called the sorry, what was the name of the guy that the other team was going after? Omar. Yeah. That was Operation Gecko, correct? Or Objective Gecko.
Yeah.
How close didn't they? I mean, they narrowly missed him on the timing. Is that correct? That he just barely got away from him?
Yeah, it's that's what Intel told us. I couldn't verify any of that. I know that the guys got on target. They met a fair amount of resistance. They killed a shitload of people, but they didn't get Mullah Omar on that hit.
Gotcha. I think this is what's so neat about having an Air Force CCT on the show is we're talking about building airfields, night missions. I mean, this is like Tom Clancy level stuff. I'm enjoying every minute of this. Let's jump to the second combat jump. We're still in Afghanistan. The war is well underway. This is a little bit of a recce mission, correct?
Can we actually go back a little bit? I want to tie something together for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's talk about Objective Gecko. So while us jumping in was pretty cool, the guys who didn't jump all went, "Man, I wish I'd have gotten my combat jumps done." The guys who jumped in all went, I wish I was on Objective Gecko, because Objective Gecko was going after the number one guy. But the way it ties together is while we're setting up the runway, these guys had hit Objective Gecko on the way back. Before the helicopters were talking to our control point, I hear one of my teammates, Brady, over the radio. I'm sorry, wasn't Brady, it was Mike. Well, my teammate Mike come across the radio going, hey, Objective Rhino, this is, task force from Objective Gecko inbound your location. So now we've got combat controllers talking to combat controllers before the helicopters even talking to the airfield and coordinating stuff that's going on. Like, hey, this person got injured, this stuff's going on. And Mike is just feeding us information as these guys are coming in. At the same time, we got a vehicle speeding towards us, and my teammate Brady, who's standing right next to me, puts his IR marker on something. He goes, hey, I've got something coming in. He calls the control point hands his AC-130 over to him, and Brady's calling AC-130 gunfire. So all in this little area, we're talking to the helicopters coming off of Objective Gecko, getting intel what happened there. I got Brady engaging, not that I got it. Brady was engaging the enemy, and we were preparing to land all these airplanes and helicopters to refuel and get everybody out of there in a single period of darkness. So it was just a really neat experience. But that's one of the unique things about combat controllers is we're all over the place. And when we start communicating to each other, we fill in the seams, just like I was told when I first got to the 24th. Like, because of where you are and who you know, and you have a bigger picture of what's going on, you're able to have conversations that speed things along. And that's exactly what happened when Mike was on the helicopter and called us. We were able to pass the control point. Hey, we're talking to Mike. Here's what he's telling us. And it moves stuff at a much faster pace, if you will.
I mean, that's so unbelievably impressive. And it really does speak to how America's military ability to kind of bring all those things together to really get the job done. And Operation Rhino, if you want to hear about it, obviously there's a lot of stuff online as well. I know people who weren't even alive when 9/11 happened. They read about it in a history book, much like I read about Vietnam or World War II. And that's why I really enjoy interviewing people who fought in the GWAT. On your second combat jump, so you got one under your belt. Most people don't even get that in their entire lives.
That's right.
And you've got many more coming. So take us through now what's going to be your second combat jump.
So the second one was an iteration of the first one. So now, instead of finding places where we knew planes could land, even though it was dirt ships, we were finding places where planes had never landed before. So we're doing a lot of terrain analysis. And again, every time we did this, we would give them a term called conditions favorable. When we got to a certain level of plane, we'd say, we have conditions favorable that we believe we can jump in, mark this place, land airplanes, and go do stuff. But we're not sure because we've never had feet on the ground and we don't know what the ground penetration is. We don't know what the exact geometry is. We're looking at satellite imagery at this point. So it was more of the same of the first one, only a little bit riskier because we didn't have any overhead imagery that says, yes, a plane landed here, even though it was a smaller plane, something landed here before. Now we're in the middle of nowhere. And from there, I then went on this tactical recce. So we jumped in, we did our missions, and then we brought in airplanes that brought in gun trucks. And then us and, a couple platoons of Rangers stayed on the ground. And for the next 10 days, we drove around southern Iraq. I'm sorry, not southern Afghanistan, landing airplanes where planes aren't supposed to land. So every night we'd go out, we'd land airplanes, bring people in. Those people would drive forward and go do deal death to the enemy, or we'd have helicopters come in and we'd bring them off the aircraft, get them up and running, let them fly forward a few times to destroy the enemy, come home, pack them up and head home. And then we would move to another site. So we were literally moving the center of gravity on the battlefield every single night. As we would go do this stuff, then we go, live in a hide site during the day, get a little bit of rest, pull a lot of security, have a little bit of food, and then go out the next night and do the same thing at a different location.
So you're talking, we know that Operation Rhino happens in October. Is this also still in October or is this in November? What's the timeline? So it's still in October.
This is still October. Yeah. We were doing this every single night. Not to move far ahead here. You want to talk about my 3 combat jumps in Afghanistan. The 24th STS, I think, did 7 or 8 combat jumps in that time. Matter of fact, the leaders of the other units were like, this is a goddamn jump trip for the 24th STS because every night you guys are out jumping. The last jump that we did, it was all senior guys in the unit who'd been sitting back doing administration while we were at, you know, having fun with our job. They're like, okay, this is the last one. And they took a lot of the older guys on it. And it was pretty funny because a lot of those dudes got hurt because they were late in their career. But they're like, man, you guys got all these combat jumps. We're going to go get ours. And they earned it. They'd been busting their ass and they were career combat controllers. They were well capable of doing the job.
So at this point in October, by the time you face your second jump, is the Taliban still putting up regular resistance? Because I know Tora Bora hasn't quite happened yet. So what type of resistance is there on the ground at this point?
Yeah. So for us, when we were jumping in, there wasn't resistance at the point of parachute, if you will. Where the I won't say resistance, where the combat or the kinetic engagement was happening was north of that. So when you jumped in, like one night we brought in the guys from Delta. They had 3 combat controllers with them, and then they immediately drove north, and they spent days in the field just laying waste to the enemy. And they were also doing some reconnaissance stuff as well. There were nights that we would just bring in the helicopters and they would fly north. And so there was no direct engagement. As a matter of fact, I typically tell people I did clandestine jumps, not combat jumps, because I wasn't getting shot at while I was under my parachute. It wasn't like World War II when they were jumping in, into Africa and into Europe. The only night that there was an engagement on the objective was Objective Rhino, and there were some people down, I think, on the west end of the airfield. The Rangers did what Rangers do, and they went and eliminated the threat.
I know that when we talked prior to the interview, you had a funny story on your second combat jump about something that you saw in the sky. I don't want to tip too many clues. Do you remember what I'm talking? Could you tell that story for the
Yeah,
audience,
yeah.
please?
Yeah. So this was during our 10-day recce, and we're out one night, and north of us was the green zone, which is where the Taliban grow all their poppy. It's where the natural water flows, so it's where a lot of the population lives. And as we're running the airfield, I start periodically seeing these things coming towards us, and nothing impacting around us, but it's just coming towards us. So I told the guy on my team who was doing air traffic control, I said, "Hey, let the aircraft know we appear to be receiving incoming fire from the north. Make sure all the traffic comes in from the south or east or west, but don't go north of the LZ." And I said appears because it's an air traffic control term. Unless you know for a fact something is something, you don't say it is something. Well, he hopped on and said, "Hey, we're receiving, incoming rocket and mortar fire from the north." And so the pilot comes back and goes, "Yeah, that's a meteor shower." Um, but it started off like one or two, and then it looked like 40 at a time were coming towards us. Again, nothing was landing towards us, so I just wanted to make sure airspace was cleared. But we didn't get the weather report that there was going to be a meteor shower that night. But it was a pretty impressive light show, that's for sure.
Well, you gotta take a moment to smile about random stuff like that. When you told
Oh,
me that
sure.
story, I loved it, and I wanted to make sure we included it because it's a little bit on the lighthearted side considering the subject matter. Your third combat jump, I know that this one is a little bit more secretive. You can't get into too much, which totally respect. We won't push the limits at all. But I do know that you were involved in getting a very, very, very sick soldier out of the area. What'd you do, and how did that kind of unfold?
Yeah, so this actually wasn't in conjunction with a jump. This was in conjunction with doing some low visibility operations on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And we were on a period where we had stopped where there were some tier 2 SEALs and combat controllers and PJ pararescuemen. And we were stopping there just to, pass some information back to higher headquarters, get some sleep, and get some food. While we were there, 2 helicopters had launched north to go pull a special forces soldier out of the mountains. He'd gotten sick. They didn't know if it was mountain sickness or it was something more serious. So the team wanted to evacuate him. On their way there, it's a flight of 2 MH-53s, and one of the 53s spirals in and hits the ground. It crashes. So that command immediately goes into rescue and recovery. How do we do this? Well, we had been looking at airfields all the way up and down the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And, as I was rolled into the briefings, just so I could see what was going on, I said, "Hey, we were just there, and we have a place that we can do a transload site if you'd like to do one." And they said, sure. So I tried to reach back to my command, because we're different commands, right? They're a different task force than we are. Couldn't get a hold of anybody at my command. I said, okay, then we're just going, which is what the 24th allows you to do. You're able to go, okay, I'm going to make a decision and I'll live with the decision. If someone's getting mad that I went on a mission that nobody approved, then that's fine. Well, the mission really was, we went into an airfield. We had SEALs there to pull security. We had a combat control team running the airfield. Because I'd been there the night before, I actually linked up with the curator of the airfield, if you will. And because now I wasn't there in civilian clothes, I was there in full uniform. I went up, I'm like, hey dude, I'm the guy from last night. We just need to use your airfield, like nothing bad's happening. And I got to calm him down. I had one of my guys at the control point, and I had one of my guys at the SEALs outside security. So we land here on helicopters. We get off and run the airfield. Those helicopters then go in to pick up the guys on the ground, and then we land on 130 to transload them. So the helicopters went in, picked up the guys, brought them back, put them back on the 130. We packed everything up. I said sayonara to my Pakistani teammate who owned the airfield, and I got on the back of the airplane. And it was pretty cool because that helicopter went down, had 2 pararescuemen and a combat controller on it. And as soon as I walked on the ramp, I was the last guy off the airfield. As soon as I walked on the ramp, my teammate Jamie, who's a pararescue, he's the pararescue team leader. He walked up and gave me a big hug. He's like, "Man, thanks for coming to get us." It was just a really neat experience. And Jamie is still in the military today. He's still in. But they were down behind enemy lines, and they were being tracked. So getting them out of there was pretty important.
That's incredibly still in today. That guy must be hell of a career, hell of a long time to be in. And again,
Yeah.
you're talking about like another tool in the toolbox of being a combat controller. We're building the airfields, we're finding places for planes to land, we're evacuating sick people when we need to. I mean, this is such an incredibly diverse skill set of what you guys can do. I do want to ask kind of on these early days of Afghanistan, the early months of Afghanistan, did you know, like where you were with the people you were with, were you guys aware of what was going on in Tora Bora when they were hammering the mountains with bombs and, they felt like they were getting real close to bin Laden, or did you not learn about that until after the fact?
Yeah, I learned about it about halfway through our initial deployment. The commander came to me one day, he said, "I need you to go sit in a meeting. I got another thing to go do." So I was the 2-4 representative in this meeting. And I'm in this meeting, it's all, 06s and above, and then on the VTC were general officers. And they start talking about this guy up north doing stuff, and it's my teammate Will Markham. And he wasn't at the 24th, he was at a different unit, so he was in a completely different task force. I came out of that meeting, I went to the commander, I said, "Did you know Will Markham's like laying waste up to the north?" He's like, "Yeah, he's been doing that for a week." I'm like, "Fuck, I had no idea." So it wasn't widely dispersed. We were so focused on the thing that we were doing, we weren't really paying attention to what other people were doing at the tactical level. I know that the commands were talking to each other, but I had no idea until I sat in a meeting. And it was great to hear Will's name called out, by a 3-star general about all the great things he's doing up north. It was really cool.
That's awesome. I assume that so I interviewed one of the reasons I asked is I interviewed one of the Delta guys that was in Tora Bora on that very, very small team. And he said that they had an Air Force guy with them and that at one point they'd called in, I think what he called a daisy cutter, like some kind of big bomb.
Yeah.
And he said when that daisy cutter hit the target, it was like ash just went up in the air. He said it was the craziest thing he'd ever seen in his life. I was just curious because, Tora Bora is a very historical moment in the Afghanistan war, and you were there in the opening days as well. On the operational security, I know you made a comment that you guys had to build a secret airfield because at one point operational security was so bad. Can you explain why operational security was bad and then what the process was of this secret airfield being built?
Yeah, the why I don't know. But by this point, I think we were 4 years in the war. So it's probably 2004, 2005 time period. But you had so many forces, like we flooded Afghanistan with a lot of conventional forces. That requires a lot of host nation support, like people, doing laundry or, building things. They were all host nationals. So operational security hard to do when you've got all that around you. What we knew is anytime we were launching after the big targets, whether it's Haqqani or UBL or something like that, like it just felt like they were getting ahead of us. So the command said, we want to find somewhere else to launch from. So while we'll always stage out of Bagram, we want a different airfield that we could, if our signature goes up because we're bringing in more planes to go after something really big, we want it to be somewhere where there are no people. So a couple of our officers, this happened over about a 6 or 8 month time period, so it handed off from one officer to another. But a handful of our officers did a lot of terrain analysis, and they found a place, a bowl in the mountains, pretty far south of Bagram. And they said, we think we can build an airfield here. And eventually, a guy named Pat, who's a brilliant, one of the smartest people I ever met, he was a special tactics officer, so a combat control officer. He and a teammate of mine, Lance, and a handful of other dudes, they drove down there with a bunch of engineers, and they went, we think we can do this. They airdropped a bunch of heavy equipment in there, which again is another combat control thing. Like, let's bring in all this stuff and get it there safely. And when they got there, they realized while the terrain could fit a landing zone in it, the subterranean was difficult to get good measurements on. So this officer, Pat, he literally started doing math on site, going, okay, so I can't get my traditional measurements by drilling into the ground and doing pressure testing. Like, given the size of the boulders that we're running into, he did displacement math in the field, and it worked. And the engineers were like, this ain't going to work. He's like, it is. I just need you guys to do what we tell you to do. And all the NCOs, even the combat control NCOs, were like, you're fucking nuts. This isn't going to work. Well, they were there, so they had nothing better to do than cut this runway in the middle of nowhere. They did, and they landed airplanes, and it zero problems at all. The only problem is a very arid area. So you had to water the runway and roll it every single day just to keep it going. Like, if you did a satellite imagery of it today, it would look like it did 6 months before we went in there. But we no shit had a runway that can land C-17s built into the side of the mountains. And I actually went down there and ran it for about a 30-day time period. They just needed a fill-in guy between groups, and they're like, yeah, Lamonica's good enough. Send him down there. I was down there for about 30 days. But it's really what an impressive feat that Pat and Lance and their team did.
And did that pretty much eliminate the operational security issues in that area at that time?
It did. While we exercised out of there, we never really launched out of there. When they launched for UBL, they actually chose to launch that team from the States. So you had a team in country, but that team launched from the States because they didn't want any operational security signature.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So when you say the launch from the States, you mean the squadron of SEALs were initially in the United States and then they went over and jumped. Got it. Got it. I want to talk a little bit now about John Chapman, who's a name that I think a lot of viewers are very well aware of, but they don't often get to hear a combat controller talk about John Chapman. In fact, the only other one who's ever talked about him on this show was Dan Schilling, and then I interviewed the pilot of the helicopter. What are your memories of John Chapman as a fellow 24th STS guy? And if you're comfortable, could you explain kind of to the audience who are maybe new viewers what makes John Chapman such a heroic figure?
Yeah, so John and I were at the unit together. Our times were a little bit overlapping. So when John showed up and he was going through our assessment selection process in the year of training, when he got to the team, he got there probably 6 months before. Then I left and I went and became an instructor for 3 years. He spent time on red team. I was on blue team. And then by the time I got back, John had moved to a different team in the unit. But John and I had gone to a couple of schools together, and we'd gone on some training trips together. But I wouldn't say we were tight. Like Dan Schilling and I were tight. Some of these other names I've said I spent a whole career working with. John and I had intermittent times together. But John was an impressive figure. John had a unique ability to understand risk and accept risk. We were at a school and they one day they're like, hey, you guys can't do this thing. And as soon as they walked out of the room, John's like, fuck them, we're doing this. And I went, okay, let's understand why we're doing this. And he said, here's why we're going to do it. I'm like, okay, I'm on for the ride. We did it. And the cadre, we'll say, got upset about it. But at the end of the day, they went, you were right. You're good to go. So I immediately, built confidence in John's decision making. And for me, leadership and decision making was something I was always trying to work on and get good at. So I had yet one more data point in my life where I went, okay, I learned something from a dude, which is pretty impressive. Um, when I got back to the 24th and 9/11 kicked off, like I got back on 9/12. I deployed on October 19th. John had been in the unit for the previous 3 years, and he wasn't on the initial deployment. There's a counterbalance there, right? Like the fuck, Mike's coming back and Mike's automatically deployed, and I've been here. But John was already assigned to do certain things, and I was a freelancer. Like I came in, they could put me anywhere, and it didn't matter. Um, the point being is John fought really hard to get on the very next deployment because they weren't going to send him on that one. And he actually went to the commander's office and said, "This is fucking bullshit. I've been in combat control my whole career. I've missed other big engagements. We need guys to go down range. I'm going down range." And he stood on the commander's desk and gave him a little bit of what for, if you will. And that's how John ended up down range. He had to fight his way to get down range. There was a point where, and this is in the book, where John was up in Dam Neck getting ready to deploy, and a family member had gotten sick. And we wanted to get John home and replace him for a period of time. So I took one of our teammates, Jack, up to replace John, and me and John drove back together. And we had a really neat discussion. It was a especially intimate discussion where we were talking about what was going on in the world and what's important in life and why we should do things. And John's one of the things that stood out to me that night, when he said it, I knew it was an important thing for me. He's like, everything I do, Mike, is for my family. There's nothing else in the world that matters anything more to me. He said, I'm here about the team. I love country. I love God. I love doing what we do. He's like, this is all about my family and raising my family the right way and giving my daughters all the opportunity in the world. And that's who John was. If you get to read the book, you get to see scenarios throughout his life where he was always focused on other people, whether it was a handicapped kid in his neighborhood, athletes on teams with him where he was trying to help them get better, or even his siblings, always looking out for them and pushing them to be better. It's just who John was. And it was a pleasure being on team with John. And I'll never forget the morning I came in when we found out John had died. You could feel something different in the unit. And we're all going, what the fuck's going on? And you immediately get mad at headquarters because they're not telling you anything. About 30 minutes into it, they called us in for a muster, and that's when they told us John had passed. And the guy who took his place going over, and then John went and relieved him and he came back, he was on my team. Jack was on my team. And Jack took it particularly hard, right? Because he was going, man, if I'd have just stayed 2 more weeks, that would have been me, not John. But that's not what John wanted. John wanted to be forward in the fight. John wanted to do the best he could and take care of his teammates. And John wanted, to do the right thing for our country. So he put himself out there. He's just a great dude. I have the benefit, excuse me, of being very close with his family. So it took forever to get John's Medal of Honor approved. When they finally did, I lived, it's a couple miles from John's mom. So the command called me, and I was retired at this point. They said, hey, we need an escort for John's mom. Would you do that? And I absolutely said, I'm honored to. So I flew with John's mom, his brother, his nieces, his sister. We all went out to DC together, spent the whole week together, and then flew home together. And I have a really strong bond with the entire Chapman family now, and I'm grateful for it.
And that is so neat as an American to hear that behind. I mean, we've all seen the video. I feel like most people watching this have seen the video, which Dan Schilling narrates. If you haven't seen it, you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So you see that side of it. Now we're hearing what he was like behind closed doors. It turns out he's just an incredible human, family man, an American. When you watch that footage and you see him kind of make that stand where he's engaging the enemy and he just, I don't want to say refusing to die, but he's just got no quit in him. How does that make you feel as a fellow CCT and as a guy who knew him?
Yeah, well, first, whenever you see something like that, the big Valor Award, Silver Star, Air Force Cross, Medal of Honor, like it pulls at everything inside you. You watch it and you go, wow, like that person did something that is just absolutely incredible. Having the benefit of knowing John, it wasn't a huge surprise, but it was great to see him recognized. Like there was a lot of banter back and forth about who did what, and to be able to have video proof and understand who was who on the battlefield. The way they did that is former Navy guy who's trying to become a combat control officer, got injured in our pipeline. And the wing commander said, "Hey, I want you to go figure out how we can pull all this video together." And technology had just come to a state where they could do that. And there was a piece of technology that could tag a piece of equipment. So they tagged John's gun. And no matter where his gun was on whatever film, whichever platform was filming him, is how they tracked John on the battlefield. So that was the technology they used. And then to be able to definitively go, these are the things John did. It was great to be able to recognize John. It was awesome for Val and his girls to be able to go, yes, my dad did these things. For his sisters and his brother and his mom. I'll also tell you, for the community, it was a hell yeah moment, because there was a lot of conjecture about who did what. But to be able to solidify and go, yep, this is what John did. Everybody was able to rally behind John. It was a unifying moment, if you will. So it was powerful.
I absolutely love hearing that. And if you're watching this right now and you want to learn more about John Chapman, you can read Alone at Dawn, written by Dan Schilling. There's also plenty of articles online as well, but a great American, an American hero, no doubt about that. And I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to shine a light on who John Chapman was. I know the audience appreciates it even more than I do. Let's pivot now. So that's a good wrap on Afghanistan, 3 combat jumps in Afghanistan, doing just all sorts of different things out of the CCT toolbox. Iraq kicks off. Obviously, Iraq starts in March of 2003. Before that, when did you start to get a feeling that we're absolutely going to end up at war? We're going to invade Iraq?
Yeah, so I'm going to set the stage for you from an ops tempo standpoint, right? So 9/11 happens. We deploy October to December of 01. I come back, I take a team, and then in July of 02, I go on my second deployment with the Navy, Gold Squadron from Dev Group. Come back from that in October of 02, get about a month to decompress, and we immediately start planning for Iraq, which is going to happen in the spring of 03. So I'm back-to-back deployments at this point. And we spent January through end of March in isolation, fundamentally planning Iraq. And then we deployed, as we were leading up to Iraq, I was looking at the intel I was seeing, I was hearing all the stuff on the news. I was going, man, why are we distracting ourselves by going to Iraq when we still got to go get UBL? Like, UBL is the number one bad guy on the planet. Why is Iraq a big deal? And I wasn't convinced on all the things. The one tipping point for me was there were rat lines of getting soldiers to Afghanistan that would come up, through the south, up into Syria, across Iraq, and through Iran and into Afghanistan. So that was one of the big things, was how do we slow the feeding the foreign fighters into Afghanistan? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think. I trust my chain of command. I trust intelligence. I go, okay, if you guys are saying this, then we'll go do Iraq. And I'm not going to complain about it. I didn't see it at the time. Regardless, we deployed to Iraq or we deployed to Saudi Arabia, and we're getting ready for, the initial day's operations. And, Delta's got their initial missions. SEAL Team 6 has theirs. And then we have some of our independent stuff that we're getting ready to go do. So it was exciting. I mean, it was just like going into the initial waves of Afghanistan. So here, at this point, I get the opportunity to plan and operate in the initial days of Afghanistan, and I'm planning and operating in the initial days of Iraq. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy. But that's what we get paid to do. And I was excited about going to do it.
When the war starts, what is your objective in the opening days of the war?
So I was more of an airfield guy, and we were planning for Baghdad International. As a matter of fact, all the way up until, the initial days, that's what I was planning. And we were concerned about Baghdad International because going in there, whether it's helicopter or C-130 and jumping in, we felt they had a lot of AAA around the airfield. And we were like, man, we're going to lose 25% of our aircraft going in there. So that was a big concern. Because it was a big concern, it wasn't a night one option, really. Everybody went, man, let's hold back and see if what we're seeing is real or not, because getting 4 or 5 aircraft shot out of the sky with a bunch of people in the back of them on the first night of the war is not going to be a good thing. And we didn't have to have Baghdad on night one. But Baghdad was my initial mission, that I was supposed to be on. As we were leading up to the war, we focused on the guys going with the Army and Navy, and they went and did their thing. And soon after that is when Jessica Lynch was captured. And I was sitting in the ops center one night, and they said, "Hey, pack your shit. You and the skipper and the command chief." So for Dev Group, the command master chief, we're gonna go forward into a team leader's recce for the command to figure out where Jessica Lynch is, or not where she is, but confirm the intel that we were getting. We flew forward and linked up with a recce team. So a Dev Group recce team, and one of my teammates, Charlie, were there. And they had done a on the ground walk forward and gather intelligence. There was a lot of Marines around there, so they kind of, they were a tree in the forest of the Marines, if you were. So they weren't sending off a big soft signature. We got some pretty good intelligence, and we were like, "Yeah, we think she's there." We flew back, and as I got off the aircraft, I thought we were going to go into planning for rescuing Jessica Lynch. And my commander met me at the back of the plane. He goes, "Hey, man, you've got 6 hours to sleep. In 12 hours, you're jumping into another airfield." And I'm like, I gave him the, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Look, and he could see it wasn't computing. He goes, "We got an airfield. We got to go take over. You're the guy doing it. Your teammate Lance, who was going to go do it, got sick to the point where he can't operate. So you're the next guy. So get your shit together. Go get some sleep." That's where I need to go into planning. He goes, "No, I'm ordering you to get some sleep. Come back in. We'll brief you up, and then you'll go do it." No shit. 12 hours later, I'm putting a parachute on, getting briefed almost plane side of what the mission is. But it is a pretty neat mission.
And I don't want to get into that real good, but let me rewind back to the Jessica Lynch thing briefly, because you're talking about confirming the intel you got. If you're able to say, when you say something like that, does that mean that you had eyes on the hospital that she was in? Like, how are you, when you say confirming, what were you doing that made you believe that that's where she is?
So we went forward and we spent time with the recce team that was there. At this point, where I was, I was with the skipper, I was the command master chief. They're not paid to go do tactical recce missions, right? So they're going forward and getting on the ground, understanding what the recce team was doing. The recce team is the guys that went out and got their confirmation. And I won't go into how they get those confirmations. I don't think that's an appropriate thing to talk about. But we were there, and they're like, "Hey, man, given all the things that we observed and the people we've talked to, she's in that building." And then I believe 2 or 3 days later is when they got human intelligence from inside the hospital saying she was there. And then after I jumped into my airfield, those guys rolled out and did that mission. It was really a great mission. Matter of fact, the first person to Jessica Lynch was a PJ, pararescueman. There's a really neat picture of him rolling up on her, doing initial medical check on her to make sure that they could move her without injuring her further.
I'll have to look that picture up. I didn't realize that the first person. I knew SEAL Team 6 had conducted the bulk of the rescue inside the hospital, and the Rangers kind of got in the blocking positions and all that stuff. The Jessica Lynch thing is always, to me, very interesting, because I was a kid. I remember it being on TV. Back to the jump. So you said it was a very cool mission. This was the one jump you do in Iraq. What made it such a cool mission?
Yeah, so there's some complexities to it. All the way throughout the workup for Iraq, from January 2003 until we actually did this jump. Saddam Hussein and his forces were pretty smart, right, and sophisticated. So they put barriers on the airfield, like big mounds of dirt and 55-gallon drums and things like that. And we had prepared, thinking that all of that stuff was booby trapped. So when we were jumping in with engineers to clear all that stuff off the airfield, but we also had Navy EOD guys jumping in with us to disarm everything. So we jump into this old Russian-built airfield in Iraq, and it's got all this stuff on it, and it's not a traditional, we hit the ground and we have a certain amount of time to land airplanes. There's hit the ground, assess what's there, clear it without killing anybody, and then we'll land airplanes. And it probably took us 36 hours to be able to land an airplane. One of the teammates with me, a guy who I'd spent a lot of my time in my career with, his name was Al. This was his last deployment. His ID card had actually expired while we were on this airfield. because he knew he was getting out. And that dude was a workhorse. We hit the ground and he didn't sleep for the first 48 hours. I kept trying to get him, like, hey man, I need you to come back here and get some rest. He's like, nope, I'm seeing this thing through. And he was on the airfield for the first 48 hours, making sure that it was cleared and ready to receive aircraft safely. What a great thing for him to finish his career out on something like that. While we were doing that, there was also an engagement getting ready to happen up at Haditha Dam. And the Rangers came over to me and they said, hey man, we know we're getting ready to go into this firefight up at Haditha Dam. We think it's going to be pretty bloody. So we have a couple of combat controllers. They already had TAC-Ps with them. And I said, do you really need extra people? He said, yes. I said, okay. So I grabbed the guys together, picked two of them, and they went out. And one of those guys actually dropped a bomb on a boat trying to come across the dam to engage the Rangers. He came back and said, yeah, I killed a boat. It's pretty kind of cool.
I had no idea CCTs were at Haditha Dam, which is for our younger viewers, one of the most famous one of the biggest, I think, engagements of the entire Iraq War.
Yeah, there were TAC-Ps there as well. So the Air Force Special Warfare had their fingerprints all over that. And, all the Rangers that I talked to, and there were a couple of Delta guys up there as well. They're like, man, we got crushed if we didn't have air power. Like that asymmetric air power, it makes a big difference.
When you jump into this field and you say it took 36 hours to kind of get everything cleared before landing planes, was the assessment that all the stuff was booby trapped? Did that turn out to be correct?
There were some things that were booby trapped, so the Navy EOD guys had to disarm some things. It wasn't to the extent that we were planning for. We planned worst case scenario. Like we thought the 55-gallon drums had chemicals in them. So, like, not only was the explosion a problem, but then the chemicals. So when we jumped in full chem gear. The only thing we didn't have on was our mask, because at that point we didn't necessarily need to worry about that. But once you hit the ground, masking up was a very real possibility depending on what we found down there. So there were some things that were booby trapped, a lot of things weren't, and there were no chemicals in any of the barrels.
I want to, this is a perfect segue. Now the war is well underway. There's the famous deck of cards that, you'd always see on TV. It was like, we're giving the soldiers cards so that they kind of get familiarized. To what extent were you involved at your level in the hunt for the deck of cards?
Can I tell one more story about the jump though?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so an interesting thing that happened that speaks to the agility of a combat controller. When we jumped in, one of the Rangers broke his femur, which is like you have to get that person to medical care very quickly. Like that's a life-threatening injury. And I came over the net with my guys and said, hey guys, we got this injury, we got to land an airplane. Well, we had a contingency plan to deal with this. And Kyle, one of my teammates, he went and surveyed the road. Landed a Casa 212 on it. We got this dude loaded up, a couple other injuries, got them out of there. And that dude's life gets saved. That doesn't happen if you don't have a combat control on the ground. You can't just arbitrarily land a plane on any road because who knows what obstacles are there. So he was able to go down this road, make sure, first off, there weren't any bad guys there, make sure there were no obstacles that were going to take out wings of aircraft, make sure it's the right length and width, land an airplane, transload these dudes on the back of the plane and get them out of there. So again, it's just another demonstration of a tool that combat controllers bring to the table.
There's what we're learning through this interview is there's a lot of different tools. It's almost like the Swiss Army knife of the special operations world.
Sure.
And I mean, I'm literally blown away by some of the stuff I'm learning here. On the deck of cards, for our viewers who might be watching this who weren't alive when the Iraq War happened, could you explain what the deck of cards was, and then what, if any, your role in that in capturing any of those people or even hunting them might have been?
Yeah, sure. So right after we did that airfield that I jumped into, I got a call. It was like 3 or 4 days later. They said, hey, excuse me. Sorry about that.
No worries.
About 4 or 5 days into it, I got a call saying, hey, we're moving you to buyout, which Baghdad International Airport. So I flew back. I linked up with the SEALs, and I was now going to be the liaison with the SEALs, which meant leading all the combat controllers and PJs that were with Dev Group. So we go into buyout. At the point we helicopter in, we get off, we take over a hangar, and that's where we're staging out of. The deck of cards, for those who don't know, was really the top 52 bad guys in Iraq. And it was, we're going to pick them off. Of course, Ace of Spades was Saddam Hussein, and you went down from there. I have a printout of the deck of cards I actually hung next to my bunk. And of that initial 52 people, I think we took out 8 of them in the first 15 or 20 days on buyout. So to put this in perspective, we had now a team running Baghdad International Airport, which was my teammates, Kyle, who was on the other airfield with me. He and Lance and a handful of other dudes were running the airfield. And then I was with the SEALs with 3 or 4 other combat controllers and pararescuemen. And our job was to go out nightly and do hits. And it was all on the deck of cards, guys. One night we got a call, and this was really interesting. It was actually an emotional event, I think, for Dev Group, because the guy that we got a beat on was a guy named Abu Abbas. Well, Abu Abbas had history with SEAL Team 6. He was the lead planner for the Achille Laurels, which was a cruise liner, back in the 80s that the SEALs went after. We got a beat on where he was. He'd been hiding in Iraq for years. And the same squadron that went after him was the squadron that had gone after him in the 80s. One of those guys was still in the unit. He wasn't on the team. He was an older dude. And I distinctly remember him going, I'm going on that mission. Like, I'm going to be there. I may not be kicking in the door. I may not be the key player, but I'm going on this mission. And he did. And we went and got Abu Abbas that evening. It was a really emotional or therapeutic event for the unit, because they kind of got to come full circle and snag a son of a bitch who tried to do something bad decades ago, and they finally got to get him. So it was a really neat opportunity to be part of.
Did he put up much resistance when they grabbed him?
No, like it's the force we had going in there. Like we had the squadron of SEALs and a whole company of Rangers. There's not much you're going to do with that group of guys. There was some resistance getting into the building, and even where I was, we had a vehicle pull around, come around a corner, and they shut the lights off. They started coming towards us. I just turned to my SEAL teammate and said, "Hey, dude, this vehicle's coming down the road. What do you want to do?" He's far enough out that we had time. He's like, "Let's light him up, man." And he just fucking tore that dude a new asshole. So eliminated that threat really quickly. They went in and got a Bill Boss. They called, mission complete. We went home, but it wasn't a terribly difficult or complex mission, but definitely something that they were happy to get done.
When you talk about the 8 guys from the deck of cards that were caught out of the location you were at with the guys you were working with, in your experience, did most of those guys put up much of a fight when they were caught? Because I know some guys I've interviewed from the tier 1 side said that a lot of Iraqis, even the higher up ones, it's like once they realized it was over, they were not going out in a blaze of glory, and they just kind of gave up. Others said some really wanted to fight. What was your experience with that?
Yeah. There was some fighting. I think it was depending on the situation. So did you roll up on them and really surprise them, or were they in a hide set of some sort where they were ready to defend themselves? But I think overall it was fairly passive. There's some tactical gunfire exchange, but nothing significant. Like when we went into Iraq, both Delta and SEAL Team 6, they went in with really heavy firepower, whether it was organic to their unit or air power or both. Shock and awe was absolutely part of that plan. Like, we're just going to destroy shit, and then by the time we get to the target, they can decide how much they want to fight. And there wasn't a whole lot of resistance. There were some early targets before we got to Bayab where there were helicopter infiltrations where those got pretty dicey. Like, guys came off those missions going, man, I thought I was getting shot out of the sky. Fortunately, they had the best helicopter pilots on the planet in Task Force 160, so they didn't. But by the time we took over Baghdad International, we were doing nightly hits. I wouldn't say the resistance was as bad as maybe it was in 2005, 2006, when we were dealing with Sadr City and an established insurgency. Like, those were some really bloody days. I remember watching deployments where a third of the dudes go and come home injured, if they came home at all. Like, there were some real bloody battles in the 2006 time period.
Well, that is it. That is a perfect segue to the very next literal question I have. What is your opinion, and can you explain to the audience kind of how you viewed these two different things. On one side, you had the regular standing army of Iraq, guys who are just fighting for the regime, essentially, some of them conscripts, some of them not. And then as the time passes, you start getting insurgency. You started getting the radicalized. You got Zarqawi. You got people's heads getting chopped off, and you got barbaric behavior. Did you view those two things as fundamentally different, or was it more they're both the enemy, they're both equal to me?
Well, it depends on where I sat. So when I was getting shot at, I didn't give a fuck why they were shooting at me, and that didn't matter. But when it came from a leader's perspective and what should we be doing, yeah, I think they were two very different things, right? The initial reason for going into Iraq was weapons of destruction, uh, secretly shutting down the rat lines going from Syria across into Afghanistan, and then to neutralize Saddam Hussein. Once we did that, what was our purpose for being there? And I think both in Iraq and Afghanistan, we overstayed what we should have done. Even the first deployment when we were going into Afghanistan, I remember having arguments with my teammates going, dude, we're going to be in and out of here in 18 months. We're not going to be here 5 years from now. So when we hit our second year of being there, I was like, what in the fuck are we doing? Why are we flooding Afghanistan with tens of thousands of people, conventional forces, when our job is to go get UBL? Right? We're not here to democratize Afghanistan. And it had been tried many times in history where people have tried to come in and take over Afghanistan, and it never works. And there's reasons for that, terrain being one of the most important, but tribalism being another. The same thing in Iraq. Like, we went in, we did a lot of things, but then we ended up creating this. We created an environment for things that happen to happen, in my opinion.
And well, can you expand? I'm glad you brought back up Afghanistan. Let me jump back there real quick before we get back to Iraq. Were you surprised how the Afghanistan war came to an end?
I was angry, surprisingly angry. Because at this point, I'd been retired for a decade. I've had the opportunity of distance of emotion, but I'll tell you, like, it angered me almost to the point of 9/11 anger. Like, when 9/11 happened, I remember having anger that, like, I could just feel it inside me. The same thing with the withdrawal of Afghanistan. I think we couldn't have fucked that up anymore. I also have a great pride in the exfil of Afghanistan, and the reason being is combat controllers ran Kabul airport. Matter of fact, the iconic picture of the general being the last guy off the airfield, it's a great, Time magazine picture. But the last guy off that airfield was a combat controller. That general got on the plane, the combat controller wrapped everything up, made sure everything was clear, you gave the aircraft clearance to take off, hopped on, ramp came up, and they took off. So first in, October 19, 2001, last out August of 2021. I have a great amount of pride of how our guys pulled things together. They brought calm to chaos as much as they could, despite the administration not having their shit together. So I'm real proud of what our guys did there. But the way our country pulled out of Afghanistan is absolute travesty. That it causes a lot of anxiety across the entire force. Anybody who's a warfighter in that war has anger towards that.
I can absolutely believe that. Your comments echo what many people have told me. It is kind of one of those. It's a balance because, like you said, there's a lot of pride to be taken in the heroic actions of guys at the airfield, saving as many people as they could. And at the same time, you gotta kind of sit back and wonder, like, how the hell is this situation even? How did we allow the conditions for a situation like this to even occur? I just got two more questions in Iraq for you. One's going to be about your time with the SAS, your mission with the SAS, but before that, Zarqawi. I have been fascinated by Zarqawi forever, even more fascinated, I think, by Zarqawi than by bin Laden. Again, young people watching this have probably never heard that name before this very moment. What was it like being in Iraq when the hunt for Zarqawi was underway?
Yeah, I have the benefit of having been there just a couple months before they killed his ass. Um, again, we flipped the script of, hey, we're going to go and do these certain things, and then there's this insurgency, and we've got to turn that around. And Zarqawi is the face of that, right? So, how do we go neutralize this guy? Um, there was a sense of urgency around that. It was everything was focused on him, especially the tier one units. Um, yeah, I don't know how to say it other than, people were pretty focused on killing him. They understand the impact that he was having on the battlefield, and he had to be removed. If we didn't cut the head off that snake, there was no way we were going to get anything done.
Yeah,
Um,
and sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you
so
off.
when they actually killed Zarqawi, um, there was a combat controller involved in that. A teammate of mine, absolutely, in my opinion, one of the best combat controllers to have walked, at least in my career. Um, he just happened to be at the right place at the right time when they had a beat on Zarqawi. They actually woke him up and said, "Hey, we need you to come see what's going on." And he was there watching what's happening, feeding information, going, "Okay, here's how we do this." Feeding information to make sure that dude got swept. And the night that they killed him was a good night.
I love hearing that. Absolutely love hearing that. And like you said, that if there was any dude who deserved what was coming to him, it's the guy
That's right.
that cuts off the heads of innocent people and parades around. I mean, what an absolute piece of garbage. Last question on Iraq before we get into some general CCT stuff. I know you did a mission with the British SAS, which we're also going to talk about a little bit more later here. And when we were talking about it, you kind of also discussed how the media just completely botched what you guys had done, and it had essentially lied about the mission, which is not exactly shocking. Can you please tell us how you ended up attached to an SAS unit and how the media royally got the story wrong?
Yeah. So this was late in my career. And I was over there in a leader's capacity, not in an operator's capacity. I was actually running our joint personnel recovery center. And the general came out and he says, "Hey, Mike," actually he calls me LA. LA is what most people know me. He says, "LA, I need you to go down and work with the Brits." I'm like, "Well, what's that mean?" So he goes, "Well, I need you to go down and advise them because we're feeding them assets every night and they're not using them. And we don't know if they don't know how to use them, if it's a cultural thing, is it an active decision that they don't want to use them? And especially air assets they're a commodity. Like if somebody has them, that means somebody else doesn't have them." So it's okay. Well, all the way through the pipeline, when you're trained to go as if you're going to be doing the most difficult thing. Even though they were telling me to be an advisor, I was like, and remember, I just left the schoolhouse a handful of years prior. So I'm still in my mode of, okay, I can't just go down there thinking I'm an advisor. I got to go down prepared. So I spend the next couple hours programming my radios, getting an intel brief, plugging in all the pertinent information in my GPS to make sure that I'm capable of, at least surviving. I get off the helicopter and I'm walking to their ops center. I'd never met these guys, never met one of them. And the dude meets me at the door. He goes, "Hey, that's your seat." He points to Humvee. I said, "Well, I was told I'm coming down here to advise you guys." He goes, "No, we're going on a fucking mission in 4 hours. That's your seat." Roger that. So we walk in the building. I make sure I get up to speed on the mission we're going on, make sure everything I've loaded in my radios is copacetic. And then we roll out on this mission. And that night we end up, we're in what I think is one of the most difficult environments to be in. We're actually in the inner city. And everything is a danger area. Every window you walk by, every alley, everything in front of you, like all it takes is one gun to point out of one of those and you're shot. So, hyper alert, going on this mission. We do a vehicle drop off a couple of clicks away, and then we walk to our target. We go and hit the target, and everything's going well. One dude squirts out the roof and he's hopping from roof to roof because in Iraq in the summer, a lot of them sleep on the roof because it's cooler. Which means they can navigate the roofs almost like they can navigate alleyways. And the Brits, they're trying to track them. So I call up, we have an F-15 above us, and I go, "Hey man, we got a squirter. Here's who's going." and the F-15 quickly gets beat on him, and he's feeding me information that I'm now feeding the Brits, and then eventually they track the dude down and capture him. So it was a success in the sense that, I got there, we did a mission. On that mission, we have a squirter, we're able to use air assets to orient us to where he is, and then we capture the dude and take him back to wherever we took him to. And I spent the next 10 days with him, and I did 10 days of missions with them. And while we're doing this, I'm calling back higher headquarters going, hey, I can keep doing this because it's a lot of fun, but you probably need to get a younger, more relevant guy out here. So eventually they sent me a younger guy from the States. I did a couple day handover with him, trained him up, and then, put the right guy on the mission. While I did okay, the younger guys were more capable than I was, way more capable.
Now, I know that there was the mission, I believe a later day, maybe the fifth time you go out with these guys, the media was not very honest about what had happened. Can you explain how that situation unfolded?
Yeah, so we got notification we need to go after a bomb maker. This guy was creating bombs that were for use for IEDs that were killing Americans. So that was the mission that we were going for. We helicopter inserted. As soon as we hit the ground, we started receiving fire. These folks were prepared for an assault. It was a hardened target. So as the assaulters ran up, they were able to breach the outer wall, but they couldn't get to the building. They were receiving pretty heavy fire from inside the building. The ground force commander looked at me and said, I want you to destroy that fucking building. I want everybody in it dead. So roger that. So I called up to a pair of F-16s above me, Viper 91 and 92, and I oriented the target, got them ready to come in. I told the ground force commander, I said, you got to move your people away from there. He said, well, I really want bombs now. I said, yeah, but you're inside of our collateral damage assessment area. Like, these guys will get injured if I drop bombs right now. So they started pulling everybody back. By the time we got everybody back, I had Viper 9192 on shore final waiting for clearance. Right then, I had Hammer 71 sign on. Hammer 71 was a AC-130, which is a more surgical platform. So I gave the Viper flight abort. I could feel the anxiety in their voice, like they wanted to engage the target. So they were kind of pissed off, but I boarded them, sent them up to 10,000 feet, and asked them to hold there. And then talked the AC-130 on. And AC-130 did as advertised. Like, they're so surgical and they're so good at what they do. They were destroying the building. Nothing around it was getting destroyed. We were getting secondary explosions from the bomb maker's workshop. And they killed everybody on target. We walked up and did an assessment to make sure everything, did what it was supposed to do. And then we flew home. When we got back, the general came out. He said, hey, Mike, I'm concerned. In the news, they're saying you guys had these people on their knees and you put bullets in the back of their heads. I said, well, that absolutely didn't happen. We had video of what we did from helicopters and from the aircraft. I said, so we can validate what we did. And he took our word for it. General was a pretty awesome guy. He believed his troops and listened to what people had to say. Plus, we had the video evidence. But your question speaks to the nature of warfare. And the fact is the media has a role. They're quick to publish stuff because they got to beat their competitors. A lot of times they publish inaccurate stuff and the enemy feeds on that. And I can't tell you the amount of guys I know who were in firefights that, if you believe the media, they attacked a wedding party and killed a bunch of people celebrating a wedding. And they were only shooting their weapons in the air because they were celebrating. But the fact is they weren't. These were ambushes that guys were in, and they were saving their own lives and their team's lives. So it's a dynamic in the battlefield that we absolutely have to play in every day.
Let me tell you a quick story to play off that I think will drive the point home and back up your version of the media. About 2 years ago, I interviewed 3 Delta operators that were part of the same unit. Like, it's not, they're all in the unit at the same time. They're on the exact same tiny assault force. And they shot 4 people that were disguised as Afghan police officers in a vehicle who were on their way to go kill someone. And one of them was either the nephew or the cousin of like the regional leader of Afghanistan. And the media reported U.S. forces murder 4 Afghan police officers. They weren't cops. They were all bad guys. They were going to but it didn't matter. The truth was out there. Now their command, they said, backed them up. They knew they'd killed the right guys. But once that narrative gets out there, it's out there, right? And it's hard to reel that back in.
Well, we're seeing it play out in Israel right now, right? I mean, it's you go down to Gaza or the West Bank. That the media reports what they receive as fast as they can, and they vet it as much as they may want to.
I agree, and it's really dangerous and shameful. But I agree 100%. I want to now open this up to kind of the broader CCT stuff and just get your opinion on a variety of things. Earlier in the interview, I teased that we were going to talk the training pipeline and how that has evolved, and I really wanted to save that kind of for the end part of the interview. Can walk us through what it was like maybe back when you were going through it, what it's like more now, and what motivated those changes?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a pretty unique perspective. So I came in at a time when they had just changed the CCT pipeline. So combat control and pararescue at up to this point had gone through two separate pipelines, but they were working together in the units and they needed all the same capabilities. So the leadership at the time said, we're going to bring the pipelines together. My class, Dan Schilling's class, was the first class where combat controllers went through the pararescue indoctrination course, which is where you basically weed everybody out in the first 10 weeks. And anybody who makes it through there has a 99% chance of making it. So I was at an inflection point in training where we were doing something new. We called ourselves the first of the new breed. That training went on from September 87 all the way through December of 99. So flipping into 2000, if you will. I'm sorry, December of 2000, flipping into 2001. So that's how the pipeline was. You would go through this 10-week course. That's where they would attrit, 85 to 90% of the people. And if you made it through there, you were pretty much guaranteed to make it through jump school and free fall school and scuba school and combat control school and pararescue school and air traffic control and all those other courses that you went through. Fast forward to 1999, 2000, I'm an instructor, and we're graduating 24 students a year. The career field is losing 34 people a year. So we're going negative. And we're already only 73% manned. So our ranking officer, a guy named Jeff, awesome officer, awesome leader. He was prior enlisted Vietnam era guy and became an officer. He said, we got to do something different. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the training where the standards at the end are the same, but we're training people up front and trying to build slowly as opposed to in 10 weeks, eliminate all the people that maybe shouldn't make it. Maybe some of those people that couldn't make the 10-week course, you can build over an 18-month time period. And we did that. And, you see post 9/11, a lot of those dudes are really good dudes. And that's how the training was. And even now that the training is evolving. So fundamentally now the way it works is you graduate basic training, you go to this thing called a prep course where they give you 4 to 6 weeks of teaching you how to PT and how to engage in the pipeline. What's expected of you? A push-up is a push-up no matter where you go, as opposed to one standard of a push-up here and another standard of a push-up there. And you learn all the stuff that you also learn nutrition, you learn how to work out properly and do fitness very well. And they measure all kinds of things on you physically, but they're also evaluating you emotionally and intellectually. I would say the pipeline now is probably harder than I went through because of all the things they measure. I tell people all the time, like, I might not make it through the current pipeline. They might look at me and go, yeah, you might physically make it, but you're a jackass. You're not the kind of guy we want. And even when I went through physically, the night before our class started, they brought us all into a room and the instructors told all these stories. And one instructor said, we want all of you guys to graduate. But based on my experience, 5 dudes in this room will graduate. And he looked at me and goes, Lamonica, you're not one of them. And you'd have thought he cast a voodoo spell on me. Most of the students in my class wouldn't talk to me after that. My point is that the attrition all happened up front. Now we're building skills into the guys and we're measuring a lot of things that allow us to look at them and go, okay, are they physically, can they make it, but they're also going to be a good operator. The schools they go through are all the same, right? They go through an assessment and selection. They go through pre-scuba, which is difficult. They go through scuba, which is difficult. Combat control school is also very difficult. All the other ones aren't as hard. Where the washout happens is assessment and selection, pre-scuba, scuba, and combat control school. Between those 4 courses, right now, we lose 91% of the people. And I say that very accurately because I was just down at the assessment selection course 3 weeks ago doing an immersion day event with some donors, and the instructors, provided that piece of data. He said, "Hey, like it's right now, it's 91%. Don't make it. We're trying to figure out how to fix that, but you can only deal with the population that you're given to deal with, right? And today's population is different than the population when you and I were growing up." One of the things that he said to me, it was really interesting. He said, the one metric that we can look at that helps us understand whether a person's going to make it, this is odd, is have they ever been in a fist fight? If you've not been in a fist fight, your probability of making it are pretty low, which is really interesting. Like, I don't even know why they asked that question, but he said it is something that is consistent across the board.
Let me ask, why do you think guys who have been in fist fights are more likely to make it as to where people who have not been punched in the face are not?
I would offer, it goes back to the old axiom of, it's not, how hard you get hit, it's whether you get back up, right? And by all standards, I should not have made it through the pipeline. Like the instructor who called me out, he was absolutely right. I was 148 pounds. At the time, I was smoking cigarettes. I played baseball. I wasn't really an athlete. But I wasn't going to quit. Like, they were going to have to kill me. I was ready to pass out and die in the pool before I was going to quit. And I happened to be in enough shape to meet the standards each week. And I've always found that that's the type of guy who makes it. Every now and again, we get a kid who's pretty wealthy and pretty intelligent and could have gone to Stanford, but he chooses to do this anyway. A lot of times those guys don't make it because the second they have a day that's hard, and everybody has those days, they're like, man, this is too much for me. Every day was hard for me. I didn't know what an easy day looked like. But I don't care who you are. If you're a collegiate swimmer, you're a collegiate runner, you're a football player, the cadre and the standards are going to find your weakness, and that weakness is going to hammer you every single day. And I think people who navigate difficulties in life are probably better postured to deal with that type of training.
I would agree with you. I think logically your assessment is spot on. When it comes to that extra year of training you do if you are trying to go to the 24th STS, is it just similar training but just more detailed and driven harder, or is it a totally different ball game?
So it's a couple things, right? It's they take you back into a more rigid posture. So you graduate the pipeline, you get to a squadron and you're on a team, and you start learning freedoms, right? And there's a lot more latitude. But when you get assessed for the tier 1 unit, you go back into a training mode. You are being looked at every day. There is a physical aspect to it, but they get the benefit of knowing what you endured through the pipeline. So when they lay down expectations for you, they know you can make it, and you know you can make it. You just got to get back into that mode. But intellectually, you are challenged every single day. And for a combat controller, that is working in a 4-dimensional space, right? You got the 3 dimensions of the X, Y, and Z axis, but then you've got the radio, which is a whole other thing. And you're listening to, in one ear, guys on the ground, and in another ear, you listen to aircraft, and you're going to have to flip channels because you're going from one aircraft to another. So you're always managing chaos, if you will. So they take your skills that you already have and they push you to a PhD level, really is what it is. That's the difficulty. Physically, it was hard, but intellectually, it's a lot harder.
How good? So one of the CCTs that I spoke to, he never went to the 24th STS, but he talked about how when he went through the training, he was attached to an ODA over in Afghanistan.
Yep.
He felt like every CCT in his class felt like they really had to prove themselves in all aspects because they knew that they were going to be around guys who were really good at CQB, all these other skills. And it's like, you don't want to be the weak link in the chain. You want to be, if anything, the strongest link in the chain. Did you kind of view it the same way or not so much?
Absolutely. It's one of the challenges of the job. So first off, I'll tell you, we don't do it doctrinally, but we do it habitually. It's how we train our guys going through the pipeline. We're always talking to them about when you get to the unit, to whatever unit you go to, The hardest thing you're going to do is being a single guy attached to another organization, whether it's Army SF, Navy SEALs, one of the tier 1 units, coalition unit, right? You could be out there with the New Zealanders in Afghanistan. You can't be the weak link. Your radio has to work. You have to know how to bring power to bear. You physically have to be able to present yourself because it's the first thing people see about you. You're carrying the heaviest backpack because you've got all the radios and batteries plus the team equipment. You cannot be the guy who holds everybody up. So that's how we train ourselves. It becomes real when you get to the unit. So I'll tell you, when I was later in my career, I was the chief of the unit, which means I was a senior enlisted guy. We had some congressmen come in, and we were walking them through all the things we do. And one of the congressmen said, "Well, what's the most difficult part of your job?" I said, "Here's the most difficult part of my job. I take a guy out of the pipeline. He's 20 years old. He's a baseline combat controller. I spend the next 6 months getting him his JTAC upgrade, which allows him to drop bombs on bad guys. It's his certification to kill bad guys. And then I send him to war. So 6 months and 1 day, he's in Afghanistan. That day, he meets his SFODA. That's the day he meets those guys. They don't know his name. All they know he's an Air Force guy. Within 4 hours, he can be in a firefight. And he's got to be able to prove himself on the battlefield with a young officer who's probably yelling in his ear, 'My guys are getting shot. You need to fucking fix this now.' And he's the lowest ranking guy. Nobody knows his name. He's an Air Force guy. That's the hardest part of being a combat controller. I didn't feel comfortable being that guy until I was at my 16-year mark in my career. At 16 years, I went, I can be with anybody and do anything a combat controller has to do and not feel under the gun. It took me 16 years to get there. No SEAL, no SF guy, no Ranger has to deal with that. They go to their team, they work with their team, and they're a number 2 guy until the number 1 guy leaves, or they're trained up enough to be the number 1 guy. Our guys don't get that benefit. You're always proving yourself every single time.
That is, and I can only imagine the stress and just the pressure to perform. We're going to get into kind of the Delta stuff, SEAL Team 6 here very shortly. And I know you have a cool story about that. Before we do, I do have one quick question. When it comes to foreign adversaries, whether it be Russia, China, who I think obviously everyone agrees the big two, China probably the true number 1. Is there anything about those two militarily that concerns you with your experience, or do you think the hype around imminent conflict with either is completely overblown?
I don't think it's overblown magnificently. I think, military leaders get paid to advise the president of what they think the most imminent threat is. Nobody was talking about China or Russia when we were in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? Because we were already focused on something. Once we pulled out of there, then all of a sudden these guys magically became a big thing again. Having said that, if you look at the world stage, China pushing on Taiwan, Russia pushing on Ukraine, Russia pushing on all of NATO, the stuff that's going on between Iran and Israel, like they're real things. I would say we're closer to World War III than we've ever been. And I don't say that hyperbolically. I say it just observational. So I think they're a real threat, and I don't think we want anything to do with it. I think in the end we would come out on top, but I think it would come at a great cost. I'm also a believer that NATO stopped investing in themselves and expected us to invest in them a long time. And I think, while Russia's a problem for all of us, NATO needs to do their job first. Taiwan's a little bit different because they're a little more exposed and don't have quite the infrastructure around them. And then, Israel, I think we have to absolutely support Israel because, they're a small democracy in an entire continent of the other, right? And they've got constant pressure on them. So the world stage worries me right now. I don't want us to get into a land war with anybody, but if we did, I am fully confident in the people we have there. We're trained well, we're equipped well, and we're good at what we do.
I'm so glad you said you're fully confident. I always get a kick out of people on social media and such who are like, if the United States get in a war with Russia, we don't have a chance. Look how tough they are. And I was like, that's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard come out of a human's mouth. I agree with you on all points across the board. I don't want to get in a war with anyone either. If the day comes where we're in a conventional war, assuming it doesn't go nuclear with the Russians or the Chinese, I'm glad you said that you're confident. I am too. And I think useful idiots online who want to trash the United States while praising the Chinese. That
Sure.
to me, that's insanity. Um, is there a specific NATO ally of yours that you've always been really impressed by? Maybe I know everyone talks about like England and France, but is there a NATO ally that has always kind of for you been impressive?
Um, one stands out because of a decision, but before I get to that, I've worked with SOF in many countries: Australian, British, or the Polish Grom, the Brits, Italians, Spanish. Um, I've had the good fortune of being around a lot of them, and they all produce really good people. They're funded and equipped differently than we are in the U.S., but they're all really good. They're good at what they do. The best decision I saw throughout my entire career was when I was with the Brits in Iraq. We came, as a matter of fact, the night we came off that target I was talking about, um, it was in the morning, so sun's coming up. We landed at the base, the forward operating base, and intel meets us at the vehicles and says, "Hey, we got to beat on Zarqawi. We want you to go get Zarqawi right now." And had I been with some of the other forces I worked with, they'd have turned around, gotten on a helicopter, and gone after him without even thinking about it. And the Brits went, "We want to do some mission analysis." And we went back to the ops center. We went to a room. The officers actually said, "Hey, enlisted guys, go do your thing." And I watched the enlisted SAS guys go through the decision-making process. They laid out all the facts and assumptions, and to include the condition of us. Like we've been doing back-to-back missions every night, not getting a whole lot of sleep, and we're coming off the target. They want us to go faster up into a hardened target after the sun came up. And the guys went, "First off, we don't believe your intel is completely accurate. If it is, he won't move because he doesn't move during the day, so he'll be there. We'll go get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. We'll wake up and then we'll go into mission planning, but we're not going right now." And the officers backed him up on it. And I remember just sitting there in awe, going, "This was the best decision I've ever seen made." Not only was the decision good, but how they got to it was really good. So I have a strong affinity for the British SAS because I spent 10 days with them and I watched them make a decision that I know for a fact other forces would have gone, we'd have gotten a helicopter shot out of the sky for no reason because we'd have gone in the daytime. He wouldn't have been there. It's still a hardened target. And, when you faster up out of the helicopter in the morning, when people are just waking up, you're nothing but a target. I thought it was a great decision. So I have a strong affinity for the British SAS.
Did they ever get a concrete answer whether or not he had been there when they thought he was?
Yeah. Yeah. By the time we woke up, they're like, "Yeah, he's not there." And the enlisted guys were like, "Exactly." So you either send us into something, but dude, the intel guys, they were like, "You got to go do it now or we'll lose this opportunity." And they just didn't allow the emotion of the moment to get in the way of making a good decision. It was impressive.
Can you talk to us real quick about the Polish Grom? Again, that's something that the average viewer's never heard of once. I am Polish in large part, so I've always had a little bit of a fascination with them. If you could compare the Polish Grom, what would kind of be their American counterpart? Would it be like Green Berets, Navy SEALs? Like, what would they compare to?
I would say, kind of a hybrid between the Green Berets and the Delta. Like it's, very few countries have the funding to go, we're going to have 5,000 Green Berets and we're going to have Delta Force, right? It's a lot of, it's a big expense. So like in my experience with the Grom, which is minimal, I won't say I've got a deep experience with them, and it was back in the late 90s. They had their big capability, but then they also had a counterterrorism capability. When we worked with them, it was very limited time. I think it was about a week, but extremely professional in what they were doing. Very capable. Again, my experience with all the soft forces from all the nations I've worked with, they're all the same guys. They're guys who want to go do something. They're triple or quadruple volunteers, meaning they volunteer to join the military, they volunteer to jump out of airplanes, they volunteer to go through an assessment selection, and then if they go to the tier 1 level, they volunteer to go through that selection as well. And when you get to the end, the difference isn't the dude. The difference is how well funded, how well equipped, and what's the political landscape in their country. And I've got nothing but great things to say about all the soft forces, to include all the U.S. forces.
Well, and that is a great segue to kind of we're winding down here. I just got a few questions left, but I always ask everyone who comes from a tier one element on this show the exact same question. People always have varying opinions, but they like to have fun with it. Delta versus SEAL Team 6 is obviously a very classic rivalry in the military community. You've had the opportunity to serve at the tier one level, and you know both organizations very well. So you are one of the few humans who can give an opinion unbiasedly because you're not part of either, but you work with them. How would you compare and contrast those two units?
Yes, I'll use a different term just because I think it's more specific. I embedded with them, right? I lived with them for 6 months at a time, both pre-deployment and alert and deployment. When it comes to being on target and you go, hey, I got to go capture, kill somebody, they're both wonderful options. They're both great organizations. They have different strengths and weaknesses. I would say Delta Force has a stoicism about them. That is, they are stoics as an organization. The first day I went over to pull alert with them, a teammate of mine who was introducing me to the guys I was working with takes me over and introduces me. We're talking, and he walks out of the room, and a Delta operator walks in, and he just stands there and looks at me. And he doesn't say hi. He doesn't say, hey, welcome to the team. He just standing there looking at me. And I found it to be odd. I think a lot of people get uncomfortable in silence, and I don't. So I just stood there and looked back at him. But it kind of defines how they engage with people. They're mission focused, and if you're not one of them, they kind of want to understand why you're around them. But really good at what they do. SEALs are also really good at what they do, but SEALs only draw from the SEAL community. So when you go through their assessment selection for Dev Group versus the assessment selection for Delta, they're kind of different, right? Up at the SEALs, it's, hey, we know about you. Your reputation carries a certain amount of weight. We're going to put you through all these rigors. And then, some guys we will select, some guys we won't. Where Delta, you can be pulled from anywhere. And they've got to look at you from a very baseline of who you are. And I think those two have two different types of processes have cultural effects on both organizations. So that'd be my feedback to you. They're both great organizations, great people. I keep in contact closely. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks ago I was in Germany, and my buddy who I was in on the Ebola Boss mission with, where we shot the vehicle coming at us. He called me out of the blue. He's like, "Hey man, I'm just checking in on you." And then yesterday I was reaching out to one of my Delta buddies because I knew he had some health issues, and he and I are communicating still today. I have good friends on both sides of the house, and I've seen challenges on both sides of the house, but both wonderful organizations.
If there is, again, because I think you can provide an unbiased answer, is there a mission where you could think of that only one or the other to be chosen for? Like, if we had to do this, we would always go with DevGru. If we had to do this kind of mission, we would always go with Delta. Are there like real examples you could choose?
Yeah, anything on the water, you're going to go with SEAL Team 6. That's their second nature, whether it's, taking down a ship or, doing it over the beach or a dive operation. A team of divers at Delta Force, it's not in their DNA. They may have the certification, but they don't live, eat, and breathe it. And there are a lot of land missions that Delta Force does that the SEALs wouldn't be involved in. The SEALs, through 2 decades in Afghanistan and Iraq, have become better land warfare operators, and they're very capable. But if you got to choose between Delta and SEAL Team 6, why wouldn't you take the people that's their base mission? So absolutely, they both have unique missions.
And this is how we're going to wrap up the this section before we get into the Combat Control Foundation. It's my understanding, based off of when we had our pre-interview discussion, you had the opportunity. You said no to both organizations at the end of your career. Is that correct?
I did. Well, it was really towards the middle of my career when I was still at the 24th. We had our LNO up in Virginia. He was leaving, and they, the command asked me would I like to go do that job. And then the sitting sergeant major over at Delta, the ops sergeant major, he called me right around the same time and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come be our LNO." And I told them both, I said, "I'm not interested in doing that." And the response I got from both was, why the fuck wouldn't you come to the best unit in all the U.S. military? And my response was, I'm in the best unit in the military. As a combat controller, I get to go work with anybody at any time when the mission goes down. If I'm your LNO or if I'm your LNO, then I only go into things that you are slated for. And I wouldn't bind myself. And part of the logic behind that to make it more tangible for the listeners, once we took over Baghdad International, every night I was going out on missions, and I was either with the Navy or the Rangers. One night I got called out to do a mission with the SEALs. Sorry, not the SEALs, the SAS. And then I had missions I was going out with combat controllers, right? Running airfields and stuff like that. So if I'm doing that every single night while these guys come back and they go into their 48, 72-hour rest cycle, I'd rather be going back-to-back missions than coming back and going to rest cycle when I'm not doing something. And that was my logic for it. And nothing against those units. They are great units, and it's a tremendous honor. The guys who go do those jobs, they have a lot of responsibility. They are highly respected. And they're leading paratroopers and combat controllers up in those units. But for me, it was more about leading our own guys and always being able to go on any mission that I go on.
I love that. I love that. And I think that the audience is going to enjoy that entire segment, especially because, again, you are one of the few people who can look at it unbiasedly and kind of lay down your assessment of it. I want to get into the Combat Control Foundation now, which I know is very important to you. You serve on the board of it. Can you explain to the audience what the Combat Control Foundation is and what the goal of it is?
Yeah. So, the goal is to take care of our people, 2 decades of war. And then previous to that, I mean, we got our Vietnam era guys, we got our guys in the 80s, we got our guys who maybe didn't go to war, but, have needs. We're there to help fill those needs. The VA and the civilian medical system can only do so much. And I'll give you an example. We got a call about 6 weeks ago. A former teammate of mine, he was having some issues and he was in a hospital. And his wife called us and said, they don't understand what he's done. So they don't understand how to handle him. They're treating him like a normal person off the streets, and he's not responding well to it. So I called Dre, our executive director. She's this wonderful person. Say, hey, here's what we got. We got on the phone with this guy's wife. And said, okay, tell us what's going on. She walked us through everything that's going on. Dre immediately reached out to a special operations specific organization that helps guys who are in this type of distress. Within a week, we had him in this new position, and as of yesterday, he's doing great. But in the regular civilian care system, he would have not gotten what he needed, and he was getting worse by the day. So our job is to, raise money and take care of our people. We have 4 pillars. We've got resilience, we've got health, we've got education, and we've got heritage. And they probably fall in that order, right? Resilience is more about dealing with things that have happened in the past, or preparing for things so that you're more equipped to handle them when they come at you. Health is clearly anything that has happened to you that the VA is not willing to help you with. Education, we do scholarships for family members of our operators. And then heritage, we dabble in that a little bit. That's a piece of our mission, but the bigger pieces are the front end of resilience and health. So that's what we do. We go raise money and we take care of people. And up until about 4 years ago, the Combat Control Association, which I'm also a board member on, we would raise money, but it was like passing the hat around our own community, going, hey, Joey needs some help. And depending on how popular Joey was, we might raise $30,000, we might raise $30. So a group of us said, man, we got to do this. We got to stabilize this and make sure we're taking care of all our folks. We started the foundation and started raising money. And we raised enough to bring in an executive director, and she just does a wonderful job. And we went from raising about 70 grand a year to now, we spend about $100,000 a quarter taking care of people. So our job is to go raise enough money to be able to do that. And the more people we help, the more stuff comes out of the woodwork. And I'll tell you, after 20 years of straight combat, we have a lot of folks with a lot of needs. And it's not just the operators, it's their family members as well.
If there's an audience member listening to this right now who's been intrigued by this entire interview and he wants to step up and help the Combat Control Foundation a little bit, where can he go to donate?
So we have a website. If you just typed in Combat Control Foundation, the website will come up. I believe you're going to drop a link out there for us. You click on that link, we have donate right on there. It's that simple. There's a phone number you can call as well. My number is 253-973-2865. I will take a phone call any day of the week. We're always trying to find ways to raise money to take care of our folks. It's all about taking care of our people. And I'll also say that, we work with the TACP and the pararescue organizations as well. We don't just take care of combat controls. We will take care of anybody in the Air Force Special Warfare community, along with our peer organizations, because it's the right thing to do. The SEALs have been doing this for decades, and they've mastered it. They do a great job of taking care of their people. Special Forces and the Rangers do as well. We are a couple decades behind. We don't even have $1 million in the bank to take care of our people, and we're spending $100,000 a month. Those other organizations have tens of millions of dollars, and good on them. We just need to get there so we can take care of our people.
And you are 100% correct. If you are watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the bio description. You can click down there and you can go directly to the website. I want as many people to go as possibly can. And if you enjoyed this interview, please at least take some time to read the Combat Control Foundation's website. I got one last question for you. It's how I end virtually all my interviews. If you could go back in time to the beginning of this incredible journey you spent decades of your life on, and you got to redo every single part of it, the ups and the downs, would you do it, or would you choose to do something else?
No, I absolutely would. It's funny you ask that question, because I tell people all the time. I get a lot of young folks that call me and go, "Hey, I want to be a combat controller," and I go, "Well, what do you want to do?" And they're like, "I want to jump out of airplanes." I go, "Well, there's more to it than that. So let's figure out what you want to do on target. Do you want to be foreign internal defense? Do you want to do maritime warfare? Do you want to, do airplanes and communications like I do? You want to, patch people up like a pararescueman?" Once we figure that out, then I help them with the path to get where they want to go. But invariably, I tell them all, it's absolutely worth it. It's the most difficult thing you'll ever do. When 90% of the people don't make it, that means it's really hard. And it's not just hard because, I'm in better shape than the other person. Even the people in good shape, it's very hard for. But if I could do it all over again, all the mistakes, everything else, I would absolutely do it if my body could hold up. It was a wonderful opportunity. I'm a better human for having done it. I was surrounded by awesome people from all the services. Iron sharpens iron, and there are SEALs, there are combat controllers, there are SF guys, there are Delta guys, there are pararescuemen, there are TACPs. All have influenced me as an operator and as a man. So I wouldn't turn any of that away. I'd go do it all again, and it has been a great ride. And even today, I still train those guys. So I train guys how to use technology in the field. So I'm blessed to be around them.